There's something profoundly saddening about that analysis. And if I might be permitted a small digression, it seems to reflect a basic sadness and pessimism in you yourselves. You're intellectuals. You're frustrated by the ineffectual character of your opposition to the things you loathe. Your main weapon is the word. Your protest is verbal. It has to be. It wears itself out by repetition and leads you nowhere. Somehow you sense, and properly so, that for a protest to be effective, it must be rooted in the realities of social life, in the productive processes of a nation or a society. In 1919, London dockers went on strike and refused to load munitions for the White Armies fighting against the Russian Revolution. In 1944, dockers in Amsterdam refused to help the Nazis transport Jews to concentration camps. What can you do? You can't strike and refuse to handle American cargoes until they get out of Vietnam. You're outside the productive process. You have only the word, and you cannot make it become the deed. And because the people who have the power seem uneager to use it, you develop this cynicism, this contempt. You say the working class has been assimilated, corrupted, demoralized. You point to his car and his house and his pension scheme and his respectability, and you write him off. You build a whole theory around it, and you fill it with grandiloquent phrases like epicenters and neo-colonialism. But basically what you do is you find some scapegoat for your own frustration and misery, and then you start backing the field. Blacks, students, homosexuals, terrorist groupings, Mao, Che Guevara, anybody, just so long as they represent some repressed minority still capable of anger and the need for self-assertion. Well, which workers have you spoken with recently? And for how long? How do you know they're not as frustrated as you are? Especially the young ones who take the cars and the crumbs from the table for granted. If they don't satisfy you, why should they satisfy the people who actually create wealth in the first place? You start from the presumption that only you are intelligent and sensitive enough to see how bad capitalist society is. Do you really think the young man who spends his whole life in monotonous and dehumanizing work doesn't see it too, and in a way more deeply, more woundingly? Suddenly you lose contact. Not with ideas, not with abstractions, concepts, because they are after all your stock in trade. You lose contact with the moral taproots of socialism. In an objective sense, you actually stop believing in a revolutionary perspective, in the possibility of a socialist society and the creation of socialist man. You see the difficulties, you see the complexities and contradictions, and you settle for those as the sort of game you can play with each other. Finally, you learn to enjoy your pain, to need it, so that you have nothing to offer your bourgeois peers but a sort of moral exhaustion. You can't build socialism on fatigue, comrade. Shelley dreamed of man, sectorless, free, uncircumscribed, equal, classless, tribeless, and nationless, exempt from all worship and awe. Trotsky foresaw the ordinary socialist man on a par with an Aristotle, a Goethe, a Marx, with still new peaks rising above those heights. Have you any image at all to offer? The question embarrasses you. You've contracted the disease you're trying to cure. I call this a digression, but in a way it describes very accurately the difficulty I experience when I try to deal with our comrade's analysis. Comrade Sloman was right under it all. Theory isn't abstract. It isn't words on a page. It isn't aesthetically pleasing patterns of ideas and evidence. Theory is concrete. It's distilled practice. Above all, theory is felt in the veins, in the muscles, in the sweat on your forehead. In that sense, it's moral and binding. It's the essential connective imperative between past and future. Now when I look for any of this in our Conrad's account, I can't find it. It isn't there. It's simply part of an elaborate game he enjoys playing, and plays well.